So I wasn't sure if this was going to work, but as you can see, I was able to get the background to render with a bit of parallax, which is nice. Um, it turns out it wasn't that hard. Um, there's this great little example file on the LibGDX tests called parallax test, and it's linked to from a couple Stack Overflow posts or something. So um, if you look here, there's a class called parallax camera, and I don't really like. It doesn't really make sense the way they use it, in my opinion, because it's a dedicated camera, and when you call calculate parallax matrix, it doesn't even update itself. It just returns a new matrix for you to use. So there's not a significant reason for this to be its own class, except that, or for it to even extend orthographic camera. I don't, unless this is your only camera. Uh, but it does allow you to store these temporary variables here, which reusable matrices and stuff, and that's nice. Anyway, so the way it works is, so this is the wrapping logic, so that when the background goes out of bounds, it moves it. I'm not doing that right now, but I probably should. So here, just like ignore these bits, but there's the background layer, which has a parallax matrix of 0, 0, and in the foreground is 1, 1. And then in the middle, it's half on the x-axis. And the way these values are being used is up here. There's a parallax x and parallax y, and it's just taking it copies in it takes the current position and just scales it by the parallax, so that if you're at 10, now you're at 5. If you're at 20, now you're at 10. And so it just, causes it to move slower. And I looked at to see if there's other methods besides set to look at, because this seems a little bit overkill. Like, all this does is it sets so view is this this new matrix, and set to always overrides all the previous values, and so this sets it to look at the new point or the new position, and this is the direction to look at, or the target to look at, and it just takes that current position and adds the way it's already looking to that position, and then this is a field on orthographic camera, and up is also a field on orthographic camera. So it just says look at this point, or move to this point, and then look directly ahead of where you're already looking, and then parallax combined gets the value of projection, which is again another field from orthographic camera. And then they use the static method here, but you can say parallax combined dot mul parallax view, and then it returns this combined parallax thing. So I did something similar. I have a in my rendering system. Where is it? I put it in extensions. That's right. It is an extension. I didn't put it in extensions. Okay, right where it shouldn't be. Okay, so this is me attempting to sort of port over their version. I ended up not using that. And I also need to comment it out of here. Okay. So this does the same thing. It just, except instead of, it's an extension method instead, so that you can use your existing camera, because otherwise you have to have, otherwise I guess the parallax camera would be your main camera, and I don't know, like this is, you only use it for background movement. So it didn't really make sense for me for this to co-opt the entire thing. Like, it makes sense here because this file, the entire purpose of this file is to demonstrate parallax, but yeah. Anyway, so what this does is it does the same thing. It creates a new vector from the current position, and then it scales it This is the position of the camera that we're looking at, we're using currently. And then it just does set to look at, and it does the same stuff. And now I'm going to change this to something a little more obvious. So I have this new component called uses parallax camera, and that's because the background is an entity and it's rendering sort of mid rendering stream by rendering system. The rendering system normally uses the default orthographic camera to run, so I need to have sort of a different camera just for this one, different projection matrix. And then at the end I say if it needs to restore the default camera, then it does that. And when you set the projection matrix, it does handle all the flushing and set up matrices for you. So I didn't think it was okay to call mid batch, but apparently it is. I mean, it's not necessarily efficient, but at least it isn't error or anything. So right now I have the parallax sort of hard-coded inside the rendering system. That seems crappy. So I'm going to make it so that you can specify, use parallax camera should take a couple of parameters here. Something else, there's other optimizations I could do, like if there's two background elements at the same time, then then they don't need to reset the camera each time. And similarly, like I don't know if this should actually be on the entity itself. Like there's already a Z scale. So one of the things I had to do was update the rendering system so that it was a sorted iterating system. And what it does is when it iterates through all the entities, it looks at the Z component of their position and sorts by that, which ensures that the background thing gets sorted, it's executed first, because there's no I don't know if this is really a thing, but I guess the graphics card can maintain the sort of the Z axis for you on the various draw calls, so that you can draw something. So you can draw the thing in front first if you wanted to, and then draw the thing in the back second. But either I'm mistaken or LibGDX doesn't surface that. In any case, for a 2D game, you don't really need it. Just draw the things you want to go in the back first. And the way you do that is something like this. Sorted iterating system is nice. It doesn't sort every single request. It only sorts if it detects that it needs to. If there's any new entities that are changed. Should sort is only, like, it assumes that the Z-axis will never change, which sort of, or so that the Z-axis of an item will never change, and the only time you need to sort is if anything is added. And the way it just does that so that you can add, if you add 2 or 3 things in the same frame, it doesn't sort 3 times, it only sorts once. That's why it lazily sorts. In any case, you have to tell it to sort, using for sort if any of the sorting criteria have changed. Anywho, so now I need to just say, like, if it uses parallax camera, then this isn't great. I'm checking to see if it has it first, then I'm retrieving it next. But this is once per frame. It's not really too much to worry about. So use parallax camera has these two parameters, and those are exactly what we want here. This is such a long variable. Of course, I have to provide it. Let's not move. Let's move the background slower, the vertical background slower. Move the background vertically slower than. So when you move side to side, it moves at half the speed of the player. Which, I don't know, I think that's a bit much. Like, the background is really far away. Okay, I mean, that looks alright. Whee! Okay. Something else I forgot to mention. I added a new, like, as you can see, the camera now tracks the player. I could make this a little bit more stretchy so that it sort of slowly follows the player. But I always found that sort of disorienting in games. Maybe it was just third person games. Anyway, so this works pretty much. It's pretty simple. You inject the camera, and then you query for all the entities that have the player component entity, which is just the one component for now. And then in the update phase, do we actually need this? No, we don't. You don't need that one either. In the update phase, you just grab the first entity. Eventually, like, if there's two players, this won't work very well unless they're right next to each other, obviously. You know, if there's two players, I'll fix this. But so it just sets the camera position to the player's position, and then it calls update. So pretty straightforward. This is of course the main camera that we're talking about. So now the camera follows the player. If I wanted to make it more stretchy, more slowly following the player, you could just interpolate between the camera's current position and the player's current position. Just say, you know, take the average of the two and then set that to the camera's new position, and then that way it'll have the distance every tick. Okay, so this time we added a camera tracker system, background, and some basic parallax. So I try not to let stuff like this bother me too much, but this border around the player it's just ugly. I want to get rid of it. So I'm not going to spend too much time on this. If I can't get it right away, I'll move on to other things. Show an Explorer. Open this in. I don't even use this Git stuff. There's too much stuff in here. Open it in Paint. .NET. And if you zoom in, this is really hard to see. Well, it looks like it's 1 pixel. Really hard to see. It looks like it's 1 pixel on the side and 1 pixel on all sides. Which, you know, like the pixels are, at this zoom level, the pixels are pretty big, so you have the shaded pixel on one side and the light pixel on the other side. I think it's just one on any of the sides. So let's see. If we go to our asset manager, and we take our sprite regions. Here we have our two-dimensional array, our array of arrays of texture regions, and unfortunately it doesn't take any like obvious parameters like, well, the thing I could do is like could just update the image, but I'm going to see if I can fix it in here first. Let's start this one at a time. So with the texture region here, we can just say like set region. Well, so these are well, region width and region height is a setter. What the heck? Well, so the other thing is that it's not going to work with the offset. Like, even if we set it to too narrower, it would be not centered correctly. So let's see. I think we can do this one. So it takes the second one here. It takes an x and a y, and a width and a height. So the width is going to be not -1 but -2 because you're subtracting one off the left side and the right side. And same thing for the height, top and bottom. And so let's just. I don't actually know if this is like local texture region coordinates or global texture region coordinates. If it's local coordinates, you'd say 1. If it's global, you'd say region x plus 1, region y plus 1, and then region width -2, region height -2. Again, because we want it to be two narrower, one for the left side, one for the right side. And we just want to move it one spot out of the corner. One pixel out of the corner. Well, I mean, so if we go anywhere else, it's going to reappear. But when we're standing still, it looks, you know, it looks normal. That's nice. So it's easy to do for one texture region. Let's see if I can pull this out as a method. But with these like arrays of arrays, I haven't. It's just because I haven't done a lot of that sort of manipulation in Kotlin. Let's see. Move one single pixel border. And just for chaining's sake, we can say return this. Oh. I guess I don't, well, yeah, actually we just need to say texture region. Okay. So, ta-da! I really like extension methods. they make life so much better. I didn't think, like, I think this is the single little feature that I use. Well, there's a lot of little features. I use nulls and stuff like nullability, stuff like that. Anyway, so this is nice because now you can just say remove single pixel border, and I mean I can also just do it up here. So this maps, you know, something horribly non-descriptive. I don't want map because this conveniently mutates the object and doesn't return a new texture region. We can just say for each. This should be returning texture regions. Oh, okay. So you do this because the for each doesn't return what we want. Does it to say this? I could use an apply for this, but I feel like I overuse apply a bit. And this works fine. So here we can say texture region dot a remove single pixel border. Remove from here because we don't want to call it twice. And I'm going to move this to the bottom because that's where helpers and weird stuff is supposed to go. Also, extension method, it's private and it's only in scope for this class. So unlike something like Ruby where you monkey patch texture region or whatever, and it would be everywhere, you can only call it from in this class. So it's very, if it was being code reviewed, it'd make it easier to code review. Just out of curiosity. Never mind. It'd be nice if there's a way to avoid this nested for you. If I could avoid it in my code. Whatever. It's not that bad. So now, after we load up the sprite regions, it removes all of them. Hooray! So I mean, in reality, you know, whenever this gets shipped, you wouldn't do that. You wouldn't like fix your assets or runtime because your assets are bad. You would just fix the asset. But I didn't want to. I wanted to leave it unmodified for now. You can see the rounded corners are still there, and that one's a little bit more subtle. He's not getting stuck on the edge. So there was a problem before where if there's like a tall wall, you could sort of push yourself into the wall and just sort of like cling to it. You couldn't jump, and you couldn't, you know, as soon as you let go, you would fall. I think the way I'm going to eventually handle that is create a debug, or create a little sensor object that's attached to the player on either side, and there's prevent them from walking left or right if that sensor is hitting something. So if you're pressed against the wall, you can't move in that direction, and we'll prevent it from trying to move you in that direction. Okay, well that looks pretty good. Checking your codes. So this was just remove annoying roll 1 pixel border programmatically. How do you spell that? Okay, whatever. From player nail sprite sheet. And that's what it's called. It's just called nail sprites. It's not very descriptive. It's actually a soldier. So the world is very small right now, but it's not very exciting for me to like add more, just like shift up the sine wave and figure out how that all works. So I'm going to instead make it so that when you click on a tile, it goes away. You can do your own little terraforming. So let's see. This is, so this part of this is the player controller. My problem with the player controller system is it tends to be pretty monolithic. Like, I don't know, like I'd really want to put this in another system. The only sort of thing that's tricky about that is you have this input processor now, and you can only have one. Granted, you can have, like I mentioned in another video, you can have a, what is this? Okay, whatever. You can have the input multiplexer, and this allows you to pass in multiple input processors. And you could also sort of stack this, so you could have you could have the input multiplexer, the main one for uh, like one is the HUD, the user interface, and then inside, and then the next input processor is like the game world. And then, but for the game world, you could have actually multiple input processors just for organization. But that's sort of not important. So I'm going to, for now, I'm just going to say like private. Um, this is going to be a vector, so it can be a val. I don't really like mutable vectors, but I guess. But anyway, I mean, LibGDX uses them everywhere, so that's just what you do. So targeted tile, dig out tile. And this is going to be a actually, this is going to be a Boolean because we need to differentiate between the possibility that they're not requesting a tile to be dug out right now. So we're just going to say this is false, and then we can have private val dig out tile target equals vector 2. And so now, if false, then nothing happens, but if true, then this is the clicked location. So there's key down and key up. Let's override touch up. I don't know. That's another decision later on. Okay, so this is the point when it starts to strain player controller system a bit, because you want to see where did the player click. And to do that, it's not hard, but player controller, like the rest of the system doesn't care about the camera. The rest of this player controller system doesn't care about the camera. So eventually what happens is you have, 10 methods and they're each injecting one thing, and then that's very bad encapsulation or whatever. So anyway, that's not a problem yet, and I prefer to like sort of hack it until it is a problem, and then you can fix it. Okay, so, well, I mean, I guess we need to override touch up anyway. And set dig out tile to false. So the world coordinates is just camera dot unproject, and then you give it screen coordinates. Unproject the vector 3. I think I figured out why it's a vector 3 not a vector 2, because it mutates the vector, because that's what all of the methods do. It modifies the incoming object. And I don't actually understand how you can have a 3D, like, world coordinates are 3D, but I don't know why the screen would never be at, it seems like it'd always be at 0 in the z-axis. Anyway, screen X, screen Y, 0. These are integers, and then what's floats. Okay. It doesn't actually need any of those. So this is where it clicked at. And if you look at Game World Builder, no, Game World Generator, this is being called from Game Initializer. So it's generating. So okay, so here's the problem. We have this world array here that represents the entire generated world, but it's not available anywhere. It's not you can't access this world object outside of this class. So this is, I mean, okay, so what I'm about to do is sort of hacky, and I think maybe, I don't know, event systems are nice, but they always turn out to be more trouble than they're worth often, unless it's for like very like passive like monitoring and achievements and stuff. So we're gonna have this object game world holder. It's gonna be a very simple little class, and all it does is holds a reference to this. We're just gonna say game world holder set world to world, and then we can inject the same thing. Okay, let me create this class first. And it's really just a data class, which I think is valid for vars. Var world is whatever the type of this thing is. Ta-da! Okay. Because we're not going to be using equals or hash code, I think this is fine. Okay, so there we go. It's sort of a hack. Like, I could publish an event called world created, and has a reference to the world, and the player controller system could inject that. But then if you want to figure out what the world is later on, then that's not going to work, because you won't have subscribed to that event by then. And another possibility is I could just do all this stuff sort of in the game module, in the main module, just so that I can just create a. Let me get rid of this stuff. Oops. Okay. I could just sort of have a function here that returns an initialized world, but that's really not what Juice is for. Juice is really just to wire the initial things together in game initialization. Like, that would mean you'd have to reinitialize all of Juice every time you wanted to like refresh the world, create a new world. That seems silly. Okay, game world. Where did I put that thing? Okay. The other thing is this is going to be if this is going to be constructed, we want to say singleton, and we need this, of course. Right. This doesn't work. Silly me. I'll just have a var. Wait a minute. Okay. Yeah, that'll probably work. Okay. So now we have gameworlder.world. That looks. So we have a way of getting the world. Granted, if you try to refer to it before it's been initialized, that's still not going to work. But that wouldn't work anyway. So yeah. So this is going to give some world coordinate, and because the world happens to be rendered at 0, 0, or is it? Oh, there's these offsets. It's going to be a pain. That's going to be a pain. Okay, well, for now, let's just demonstrate that we're clicking in the right spot. So you notice that in the lower left corner here, it's like -2, -12. That's because when you jump, that's because the camera is moving, which is what we expect. So if you're up here, if you're on the top of the world, click here, and you get different coordinates. Now it's 7, 8, 7, -8. Great, that's fine. So I think what I want to do is Game World Builder. This you know, wait, there actually might be a smarter way to do this. Because these are each physics objects, you can actually just query the engine and say, what am I clicking on? Yeah, that's the ticket. So you still need this. Well, okay, there's a couple ways to do this. We're definitely. This is what I'm talking about. We definitely need the world because it's what holds all the physics objects. And the other thing that you really need to be careful of is when it's going to do a raycast from the camera through to everything that's, it draws a line from the camera to the background. And it can hit multiple things. Like if you click on the player, it'll be like, hey, you clicked on the player. So you'll need to filter by, is this terrain or not? Unless you want to click on the player. If you want to select the player to bring up a sort of a strategy game, sort of a pop-up or something. So you can actually just say, give me a raycast. There's also... Nah, that's not it. I thought there was like a capital query axis aligned bounding box. I don't know if that's even what we want. Yeah, there's this thing. So an axis aligned bounding box is just a box, and it's I guess it's I'm not sure what axis is aligned. It just means like it's rotated upright and it's centered. The position is centered at the given. Well, it's not centered. Obviously, there's a x and y. There's also a callback. I don't know if this is what we're going to use, but I just want to look at it real quick. The query callback. Yeah. So the reason I guess why it does this is that instead of returning a list of everything that it intersects, you pass in a query callback. I think it's still synchronous. It could be asynchronous, but I think it's still synchronous because everything in physics is pretty much. But the other reason is because of this thing here. So if you click and you only want the first thing, or the second thing, it's not going to click through and show you everything. I imagine especially in like a 3D game where there's a crap ton of physics objects through the viewport, that's more important. But I think we can also just do raycast, which is looks sort of similar. So ignore the J and I stuff, but there's these two different things here. Actually, they're the same thing. They just have different ways of passing the vector through. So you can raycast like from the camera's position. I don't know if you want to raycast from the camera. I think you want to raycast from the world point, just like plus or minus 1,000. I don't know. There's a lot of ways to do this. Let's just do raycast because it's between 2 points, whereas the other one is like this bounding box and it seems a little bit more costly. Okay, so let's say raycast, and it takes a raycast callback. I haven't done this a lot before. This is the sort of thing that you do like once per game, mostly. Okay, so I'm gonna drop all these question marks because they probably won't be null. Fraction. I'm guessing, what is that? Come on. I'm guessing it's, well, let's see. Oh, it's not documented. Great. Terminate the raycast. Return fraction. Clip the ray to this. Buh. I don't know. I would guess it's because when you do the raycast, I'm not. Okay, sorry. Let's read the documentation. Like a ray, in the mathematical sense, is oops. The ray in the mathematical sense is sort of, it starts at a point and it expands indefinitely. No, not the film. Disambiguation? Yes. It starts at a point and it goes infinitely or half line. I've never heard that before. So anyway, so my point being is you give it 2 points, but I don't know. I mean, it has an ending point, which is, I mean, that's not an array, that's a line segment. Whatever. So anyway, let's get on with it. So for the callback, let's not worry about the callback for now. Now, what does it want me to return? -1 to filter, 0 to terminate, fraction to clip the ray for the closest hit, 1 to continue. This is what enums are for. Except for this fraction bit, that might be hard. Also, like returning -1 for float, well, that seems crappy. Whatever, just return 1, and we'll worry about tweaking that later. So for the first point, we want where we clicked. I created a new extension called 2D, and you call it on vector 3 and it just returns a new vector 2 with just the x and y coordinates. It does sort of encourage wasteful object creation a little bit, but I don't know. That sort of thing is like games, like engines like this are optimized. They're optimized for the lowest common denominator, which is mobile devices, which historically have not had great garbage collection. But if you're on a desktop, like you can pretty much create all the vectors you want without having to sort of reuse them. In fact, I think that's a best practice because otherwise it messes with the garbage collector to have all these persistent vector 3s hanging around. Anywho, so because I'm mainly worried about desktop, that's I don't feel bad about that. So clicked at world is now a 2D vector, vector 2, and for the next, so we're looking at, I don't know why it's duplicated here, but we're looking at the still highlighted ones, the vector 2 with the point 2. So target, well not target, point 2, because that's helpful. Equals new vector 2 plus, wait a second, a vector 2, that doesn't make any sense. I want everything through a single point. You know what? How about for our second vector point, we just say clicked at world. See what happens. You clicked fixture. Okay. So if we run this, and if you click here, hey, it crashes. Yeah, so that's one of the cool things about working with the JNI library is this happens not frequently, but if you try to destroy a body or something that's already been created, that's already been destroyed, like it'll just segfault. So usually it creates a stack trace somewhere. But not today. That's lovely. I mean, it's probably like it's probably this thing. Like, pretty sure. Yeah. So it's so it's something with this raycast is blowing things up, and it could be that this point is on top of that I'm passing the same point here twice. So let's just say create a new point. It's at the same point. So the reason why it's a vector 2 and not like I was thinking that I want to point from the camera into the game or into the background, like that'd be a 3D vector. But this is box 2D. There is no third dimension. So you can just say add something very, very small. Oh, maybe not that small. To, well, whatever. We don't actually need both directions. It just needs to be not the same. Ignore shapes that contains the starting point. Well, that's exactly what I want. Oh well. Well, on the plus side, it's not crashing anymore. On the downside, it's not working either. Okay, so this is... where's that structure tab? There we go. I wish I could filter out J and I. That's not helpful. Sort. Okay, well this is almost as good. You know, this is starting to sound better and better. The only thing is it's like the scales are all in world coordinates. So if you want to find out what 1 pixel is, you have to sort of create 1 pixel and scale it to world coordinates. But we can do that. We can take 1 pixel and scale it to world coordinates pretty easily. Okay, so raycast was a bust. Because I mean, it's not really... I don't know, raycast is sort of a bad name for it, I feel like. Let's try query access line bounding box. Query callback, which has a much saner API also. It doesn't do this fraction return value crap. For lower x, we want clicked at world. Okay, we'll click to world x, click to world.y, and then we don't really need the second vector. I only created that because reasons. So I can say click to world.x plus 1.pixels to meters, and click to world.y plus 1.pixels to meters, and that should probably do it. Implement the thing. You clicked mixture. I like lambdas, so I don't like one-line lambdas. So it's return. What does this return? Return false to terminate. Let's return true. Okay. Convert to lambda. I guess that's slightly better. Now we run. So now this is gonna basically create a little tiny square, and it sees what all hits this square. So if you click, there's nothing. Hey, it's working, I think. And if you click on the player, you also get that. So okay, so we now know which box we're clicking on. So the question is what to do. Okay, so firstly, the fixture is just it's the square shape. It's not the actual. It's not the entity. If we want the entity, we can say fixture.body. So this is the body. This is the main, physics object. And you can say user data as entity. Because it might not have one, so you can say as entity, and then this means, just as a Kotlin refresher, either user data is null, in which case this will be the null type, or it's entity, then it will be cast as entity question mark, and then it'll be accepted. But if user data is non-null, but also not entity, then it'll throw a class cast exception. So, because we don't actually know what we're hitting yet, we don't really want that. So if you put a question mark here, then instead it's sort of a try cast. It attempts to cast, and if it can't, then it returns null. I don't know if this is redundant or not. It's not warning me. Whatever. Anyway, so most of our physics, or basically all of our physics objects, are attached to an entity. So all we need to do is make sure that in our game world, these names are terrible, game world builder, where we're creating our entity here, we just need to make sure that the body has user data set to this, where this is the entity here. And then now we can reference any, like, one thing to keep in mind is there's no user data 2 or 3 or 4. You get a single field here, but that's okay, because if you wanted 2 and 3 and 4, you could just have another Pojo or hash map or whatever that has additional fields. But box2d doesn't really help you out with that. So, but we don't really have any additional data. Everything is encapsulated in the entity, as it should be. Anyway, so you can now say you collect entity, which still isn't going to have any information, but we can just sort of demonstrate that it's there. You collect entity, whatever. This one's sort of funny. So this is funny because remember that there's actually multiple fixtures here. There's the circle, and then the square, and then the other circle. So when you click on it, it actually triggers. It goes through each of those fixtures because we're returning true here, and they're all the same entity. So whatever. So what you can do is you can filter by what component it has. Hey, it has the player component. Ignore that click. So if the entity is null, then we're just going to assume, well, that'll be sort of boring, so I'm just going to say false. This is sort of a goofy thing. I'm not really sure exactly how to represent this. I mean, this is what we want. You know what? I think we can just say if entity not equal to null and So it was on the right track before, but you need to specify the non-null check, and it does the smart casts to make sure it works. Okay, so the next question is like, okay, what do you do with this information? You have the entity. You still don't know, like, I guess the question is, this world, this world array that we went to all this trouble of saving, do we actually want to use it or not? Like, do we actually want to like update the array of sort of world positions, and because that doesn't really do anything. That was only used to populate that was only used to pass the game world generator. So we could just say actually, the entity can't remove itself. I think because the entity could be part of multiple engines. So you just entity.remove entity. You don't need to comment because it'll be pretty obvious if it's working. We're not actually using, I'll worry about that later. We're not actually using any of these fields here. So now if you click on something, it should disappear, assuming it's not the player. Hey, I'm digging. Oh, great. Oh, right. So it doesn't actually get rid of the physics object. So there's actually a couple different ways I can handle this. That's pretty funny. I could say world dot destroy body entity dot physics dot body. So I mean, this technically works. Mostly. That was fun. I think I might have been getting his head stuck. because his character is actually like up here, it still shouldn't be getting stuck. That's pretty bad. Okay. Physics bugs. They're the best. Whee! Okay, so the problem is like this is a chore to try to remember every time I do this. Like, you have to be really careful that when you remove the entity, that you also destroy the body associated with it. I could create a helper called engine.smartDestroy body or something, but the other thing is when you remove the entity, it doesn't just remove it straight up. It sort of adds it for removal later at the end of the cycle. So I guess that's sort of beside the point. The other thing you can do is you can actually subscribe to events in the engine, like this entity is being removed. So we're going to do that. And we do that, not engine. Yes, engine? Yes. Actually, yes, we're going to do it here. I mean, it doesn't really matter. After all the systems are added or whatever. Add entity listener. And what I want to do is get called when something is removed. Added from, removed, blah, blah, blah. Entity listener has multiple fields. Okay, perfect. So we say engine.add entity listener. And we only care about one thing. Does it have a physics component? And if it does, we do the thing we were doing before, but automatically. So we have to override both. Because it's an interface. However, what we want to do here... Oh, crap. Where's the world? So all these methods here happen after this configure method, I believe. So, and this is sort of weird, I can just say, this is another way to do injection, method injection inside the module. So I can just say world here, and hopefully that'll work. So we don't need to check to see if it has physics or not. We know it has physics. So we can say world.remove destroy. Very violent. Also interesting is that the world itself also has a destruction listener. So if you wanted to, you could destroy the body and then cause the entity to be destroyed from that. But I think the entity should be the primary source of truth. So now we say entity.physics.body, and this destroys everything, all shapes and joints. Okay, so either this works fine or it blows up. Well, I think that's working. So this will be funny. When I click here, the game is probably going to crash. Nope. Oh, well, that's surprising. Maybe... I can destroy 2 blocks at once. Okay. That's interesting. So I thought it was going to crash because I'm already destroying the body here. I mean, maybe it's doing it twice. Normally, if you try to, like, I've had a lot of experience. If you try to destroy something that's already been destroyed, it doesn't like that. So if you click right on the border, I'm gonna, like, this is like a whole pixel, but really I don't want a pixel. I want like an epsilon sort of very, very small value. Yeah, just like the smallest possible float. Well, not really, but it's pretty small. The other thing I could do is this. Instead of returning true here, I could return false, or I could say I could ensure that it only removes one entity. This is sort of there's a couple different ways to deal with that. Well, let's see if this one works. Okay, well, apparently not. So I guess it's thinking it's colliding with multiple things. So, well, actually, this is pretty easy. I can just say return false. Mostly easy. Okay. So the fact that it was hitting 2 at a time still means that it might it'll select only one of them, but it might select the wrong one. Well, that's sort of funny. You can, if you're like on the pixel border, you can actually just click twice, and without moving the mouse, and it'll get both of them. That's sort of, I mean, that's something that should be fixed, but is again sort of like the important thing is that you can dig through the terrain here, and like if I wanted to. I mean, floating terrain is sort of unrealistic a little bit. If I could detect when it's no longer being connected to anything, what's the best way to handle that? Then it can, each of these blocks can turn into like a dynamic body instead of a static body. I think the easiest way to, I don't know, this would be terrible, but one way you could do that would be to have each body connected to its adjacent bodies using a joint. Granted, that means, uh, well, it wouldn't be every body. I mean, you wouldn't need to create 8 per body because then you'd have two joint. You know, have a joint from left to right and from right to left. So if you think of each one just connecting like down and right, so it'd really just be 2 joints. That might be fun. I don't know. I don't know if that'd be like a good gameplay mechanic or not. But and the other thing is like that would cause the entire thing to fall as a single floating thing. Because when I remove that bottom one, when I sort of want them to all like it's not going to fall as a single thing necessarily. I mean, it's dirt. It would fall as multiple things. Each cloud would be its own whatever. Okay. I'm gonna call it good. So you know, let me just clean out a couple things. Okay, well. Oh. The thing is, even if we did hold this around, it's not like we're rendering this array of arrays. It's really, really not doing anything. Okay, do we still compile? And I fat-fingered F8. Still working. You can dig out little tiles. Like eventually, like this is very like ultra alpha, obviously. Like so really you'd want to have, first of all, what is he digging with? You want to have some sort of pickaxe to be cliche, or shovel. he'll defy stereotypes. He's gonna have a shovel for digging dirt instead of a pickaxe. You don't want it to be like instantaneously. So for one, it should take time. For another, like there should be sort of like some sort of cracking animation or something. Thirdly, like that's no good, you know. The first struggle for the player in the game. He can't jump up as high as he wants. Okay. He can't get over all the terrain unless he actually digs it out. And yeah, so it's coming along. Background also needs to be split into multiple layers, but it's just a testing background anyway. I'm not really going to use it, so I'm not going to really spend time on that. Anyway, so thanks for watching.